And then as I start every meeting, I'm going to go ahead and friendly mute all of you guys. If you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or to raise your hand. I hope you guys all know how to do that. It's in the upper right hand area. Raise your hand in the chat. And then I'm trying to see if I have Curtis on or not. I don't see that, so I will man the chat as I can. All right. Well, welcome you guys to your Farm Phobia Coaching to Confidence class. By a show of hands, none of you guys have your cameras on. So if you guys could turn your cameras on briefly, and by show of hands, let me know if you've been able to take the education department's farming class that I also included in the calendar invite for it, whether you've taken it before or if you've already signed up for it. So guys, turn your cameras on and raise your hands, or raise your hands in the chat. And let's see how many of you guys have done that. Okay, Denny, great. Well, Joy, you're one of the teachers. I should hope so.
I know. I just want to participate with you. I just want to give you some.
I appreciate that. And actually, that's a good point. So before I jump into mine, I see both David Hacker and Joy Johnson are on the call. David and Joy are both our wonderful education department trainers here. So a lot of those classes you guys sign up for and take through Sales Pro, including the farming class that I recommended you guys do. David and Joy lead those. So everybody say hi to them in the chat. And David Watkins said that he's done David Hacker's training on this. So really excited for all of those who have taken it. I hope that this kind of helps you also practically put it into practice for your business. For those of you guys who haven't taken it, please sign up for it later this month. I think I included the dates, or look at it possibly next month when that calendar comes out, because it's going to be really good for you guys to have both these trainings as you move forward. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in and share my screen. The first thing that I do when I think about farming is obviously identifying where I want to farm, okay? And then you got to create the farm. So when you're thinking about where you want to farm, think about a couple things. Where do you know and want to work? The whole idea of farming is the return on investment, right? You're hoping someone calls you off that postcard. So if you're sending a postcard somewhere, you should know the area backwards and forwards. That should be the area that's your MLS. Every day you're checking to see what's happening with the average market time, what's happening with the average listing price, all of that stuff. So when I think of farming, I think of areas that I know and want to work in, or I already work in. Maybe I've done a few closings in that area and I'm like, hey, I could be kind of the household name in Ravenswood Manor now that I've got those 3 closings under my belt. So I'm going to leverage those to farm to an area. And then what you're going to want to do is go into your MLS and go into Remine through your MLS, which is our tax data partner with MRED, to be able to identify that farm. So I actually already hopped into Remine to save time with loading. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen in just a quick second. Joy, since you already lovingly unmuted, are you able to see my screen?
Yes, I am.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I am in Remine and I deleted all my filters so we could kind of start fresh for you guys. In case you didn't catch from my previous tip, I'm going to look at Ravenswood Manor. I actually live not too far from there. I think it's a great northern neighborhood in Chicago. So that's kind of what I'm going to look at in this area. So in Remine, I've already zoomed in a little bit to the area I want to go, which is Lawrence to the north, Montrose to the south, Western to the east, and then the Chicago River to the west. I really hope I got all of those directions correct in that. But as you can see, there's going to be a lot in here, right? It's showing over 10,000 results. If you tried to mail out 10,000 postcards, you're looking at a pretty hefty monthly amount. So I'm going to go ahead and narrow it down for you guys. And over here on the right-hand side, you'll see there's just a little Q here. And so this is how I'm going to draw my radiuses. I can either do a circle, a square, or a rectangle, or a polygon, pardon me. So I'm going to do the polygon because for right now, I know this area well enough to know where it is I want to look. So I'm going to go from Lawrence to Western, and I'm actually just going to go to Wilson and then back down, and that's what I'm going to do. So now my farm is in here. And again, I have no filters. So without any filters other than my polygon, I'm at 1,500, almost 1,500 results. So now this is where you can play around with Remind and determine who it is that you're trying to identify to mail out to. So if you're a newer agent and you don't have sales to be able to pitch out, right? You can't say, hey, I just sold this in your area. I'm your neighborhood expert. Think about looking for people that have owned their property between 3 and 5 years or 5 and 7 years, because based on our interest rates, right? So think about it this way. Interest rates are about 2.8% now. If someone bought 3 years ago, they were probably paying over 5% interest rate, and they might have pretty good equity. And I know in this particular neighborhood, because I've looked at the neighborhood, I've researched it, I know what the average price points are. I know that if someone bought 3 to 5 years ago, they're probably looking at making a pretty decent profit on their property. Obviously, it's very dependent property to property, but on average, they're going to make a good amount of money, and they'd be able to take that equity, buy something else at a pretty nice low interest rate. So when I think about that, that's where I go to my filters to determine how I'm going to go through this. So the first thing I always look at is property value, because I am working smarter, not harder, right? The best way to control your incoming gross commission income is by tweaking your average sale price, right? Raising that average sale price by $50,000, $100,000 makes a really big difference in that take-home GCI. I also know, because I know this area, kind of the average prices that I'm looking at anyway. So for this area, I'm actually going to do a minimum of 200,000, not 200. Wow, that'd be crazy. And I'm going to focus on probably right around the sweet spot of 6. You're not going to find that many things too far above that, but I'm going to do that and then just see where now I'm at 443. Every time I add a filter in Remind, I always look after each filter to see what my results have gotten to, because it's kind of finessing the system. So you got to play around with it. I like farms that are about 100, 110 names, because in Express Docs, which I'm going to jump in to show you some options in Express Docs once I have my farm, I know in Express Docs that's about $70 to $75 a month at 100 names based on what the bulk ordering for postcards is. So that's kind of what I like to do. But think of your budget. If you're like, well, that's great, Rachel, but I want to spend $250 a month on postcards, then think accordingly. Maybe you have 2 farms then, or you have 1 larger farm, but just you got to think about your budget first and then kind of think about how many people can I be mailing out to. The home equity is an okay tab. I prefer not to go into this one as much because, like all culminated data, sometimes there's mistakes. So I'm not going to leave it up to Remind to decide if that owner has equity in the property. Instead, I'm going to look at the ownership time, because then I'm in a likelihood of them having equity. So in this case, I'm going to go 3 to 7 years of how long they've owned it. And then again, so now I'm at 112. So I could stop right there because this is right in my sweet spot based on the budget I want to spend in the area I want to work in. To me, this would be a comfortable amount in it. But I might want to tweak it and say, well, I want to focus on the cell score, because Remind uses very creepy information. Those creepy Google and Facebook and weird analytics. Somehow they always know that you're a graduating senior from high school, so you get all the college things, right? Or somehow they always know that you're expecting a baby, so all of a sudden Bye Bye Baby is sending you a magazine every month. So cell score kind of does that. Based on all of those creepy analytics, they're determining whether or not someone has a low risk of selling, a medium risk of selling, or a high risk. I guess risk isn't the right word, but high probability, medium probability, or low probability. So I like that medium to high, because obviously low means it's going to be a lot longer. But now I'm dropping down to four results. So in this case, I'm actually going to get rid of my cell scores, because again, I'm just tweaking, trying to make this work, trying to make it work for me. So I'm comfortable with this, but I want to talk with you guys about the other options. Absentee, especially for you newer brokers who maybe haven't poked around, or my legacy folks out there who are so used to Realist, much better program in my opinion. This is somewhat of a foreign language that we're all adopting to still. But absentee is talking about, is it a corporate owned condo or single family home? Does the owner occupy it? Is it absentee, but the owner lives in state, or absentee out of state? So think of absentees typically as maybe that's your investor that's leasing out the property, and they're basing the in state and the out of state, they're basing that on where the tax bill is being mailed to, just so you know. If it's in a flood risk zone, most of you guys should probably know in Chicago proper, you're not really going to see that. Building type, you could whittle down. Maybe you want to be the king or queen of condos in Ravenswood Manor, and so you don't really care about listing a single family home. You just want to do condos. Or maybe you want to do multifamily homes in Humble Park. This is where you would make those distinctions. Scrolling down a little bit, you'll see some other options, land use as residential. So I'm just always going to apply that because I think that that's just, obviously I'm a residential agent. I don't want to sell commercial, so I'm going to do that. Notice it did knock off 4 properties on that, so it's probably mixed use. They have this cool Airbnb one now, which can kind of highlight where the Airbnbs are just for you to take a look, but I'm not going to keep that on. Mortgage rate is guessing and pulling from tax data and mortgage data what their current interest rate is, what their mortgage age is. These are kind of self-explanatory. Maybe what their last sale price was. So what did they go under contract? Are there any distressed deals? Is anybody pre-foreclosure? So kind of click through these and play around. If you guys haven't played around in Remine, I highly recommend you do it because you can learn an awful lot through it. But as you can see here, I've got 110 good properties that I want to start mailing out to. And so what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to take this and save the search, download this mailing list, and upload it into ExpressDocs. Because farming, there's 2 parts. You've got to identify the farm, which is what we just did. You know, we pulled the mailing addresses, we pulled the general area we want to do it. But then I have to be able to think about, what am I sending these individuals every month? And that's where ExpressDocs comes in. So I already have ExpressDocs open, so I'm going to go ahead and jump into it. And Joy, thank you for being my Vanna White, but can you see my ExpressDocs?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. I tried sharing my screen in a different way today to see if it was smoother. So far, it's working. Okay, so when you click into ExpressDocs, you guys, you may or may not have noticed, if you've been here longer than 6 months, you'll notice that ExpressDocs looks a lot different than it did 6 months ago. So in middle of the stay-at-home order, well, our stay-at-home order, ExpressDocs kind of shook up their program and how things laid out. So it might take you a second to figure out how to navigate. I promise you, the stuff is all still there. It just might be filed a little bit differently. I actually think it kind of works once you figure out where to go. But the most exciting part about ExpressDocs now is all of the stuff has the new logo, which is really great because that was not the case 6 months ago. So when you think about farming, if you have a property that you're going to be advertising to that farm, you could go ahead and live right around in your like these types of postcards that are actually showcasing a property. So right here, like the North Star, that's what our logo is called, the North Star postcards, where I could do the property postcards or things like that. But I like to live by the 80-20 rule. And if you guys have attended any of my other coaching, like my social media coaching or my prospecting coaching, and we have our prospecting, our SOI, I think next week or the week after, that one focuses on, again, 80-20 as well, right? So 80% of when I was farming, 80% of what I sent out in the mail, I looked for it to be fridge worthy. Okay, so 80% is fridge worthy, which means that front of the postcard is something that that homeowner is going to say, wow, this is pretty cool. I'm going to put that on my fridge, right? So some of the things that I look at, I actually did this 2 years ago. I sent out postcards to my sphere and my farms with the summer Chicago festival list on it. So it ranked like June through August, all of the different festivals, the dates and everything. And I was visiting a friend's house like a year after that, and she still had the 2017 like postcard up, and it was already 2019. I was like, why do you still have this postcard? It's not even the right dates. but it's because it was fridge worthy and it looked cool, but it also was informational, something that people want that's not just screaming real estate in their face, but instead something they can refer back to. So sometimes I've actually received some where it has my favorite, and I always forget to save these, so maybe I'm not proving my own point, but my favorite ones are talking about the measurements, so how to change cups to ounces and things like that, because I feel like people who bake and cook never seem to have that handy, but it's always a nice thing to have around. Maybe it's the 5 green cleaning tips or the 5 ways to sanitize your house so that you can safely have visitors, or the things to do to get ready to prep your house for the winter. All of those type of postcards are going to float in this bucket down here, this personal marketing area. So if I click into the personal marketing area, you'll notice there's a lot of different stuff in here. There's community-oriented postcards, COVID-19 measures. So maybe you want to send out to the sphere what you're doing to stay safe in COVID-19. Personal opinion, that's a little overdone. We get emails on that every day. Maybe you want to focus on something else right now. We have every holiday you can imagine. Groundhog Day, I didn't even know we had that one. I think that's pretty exciting. But as you scroll down, that's where you get to some of the more legitimate 80%, right? So the recipes, the consumer tips and safety tips, maybe living green, real estate specific, so you're buying, you're selling, etc. City specific marketing, so Chicago proper, and then you can kind of go down. The calendar ones are always nice, like, although I do feel really sad for all of the agents that in January and February sent out like the NBA season and the MLB season calendars, because those kind of didn't work out in their favor this year. The spring forwards, there's a lot of different options, but if you think 80% of the front of the cards is fridge worthy, the other 20% is real estate. This screams real estate. So maybe in those, I'm living straight up to like, this is how to handle your property taxes. And that's what the front of my card is. Not that exciting, but it is user information that's going to be important to them. So let's just jump in real quick on the consumer tips in real estate. Give it a second to load, okay? Because it's loading a lot of data. But just right off the bat, you'll see that we have a couple different ways that you can do it. You can do real estate related. You could say selling specific, buying specific, or maybe you're doing a just listed, just sold. But look through these. And when you're thinking farming, farming is about consistency. That 110 people, those 110 people are going to get a postcard from me every third week of the month for 12 months. I'm committing myself to that consistency. Farming takes time. In real life, farming takes time, and in real estate, farming takes time, right? So this is not a one and done. This is not a 2 months, I didn't have anybody call me, I'm not going to like send any more out. So that's why I think about my budget. What can I afford monthly to send out for 12 months minimum? And then I'm going to work on that. So then take a look at these different postcards, because the other part of it is identifying your look. You don't want to just be sending things out and seeing what sticks. When you send postcards out, if they were to lay all 12 on a kitchen counter, do all 12 accurately represent your brand and your styling, right? So 1 month you send Why Wait Dream Home, but then another month you send this one out. They don't really correspond. They don't really look the same. So kind of think about if someone were to lay them all out, which is highly unlikely, okay? But think about it that way, because you're branding and marketing yourself and your expertise. Think about how it would look if all 12 were there, and send something out in that way. So as you're going through, most of these fall into that 20% category, okay? These are very real estate specific things. Infographics are always nice. I really like these. Mortgage interest rates are down, meaning it's a seller's market because there are more buyers with less inventory, like things like that to kind of pitch out to them. People always wonder, what does it mean to be a seller's market? That perfectly explains it. So the front of the postcard is half the battle. And I want to show you guys some 80% options. Now there's obviously holiday ones, but when I think of farming, I think who else farms? Dentists farm, accountants farm, I'm constantly getting insurance providers farming, and every single one of those sends me something on a holiday and I delete it or I throw it away. So maybe you don't want to fall and do everything as a holiday. Instead, you want to focus on different recipes you could do or consumer tips for the property. Again, it might not scream real estate, but it relates back to it. So these recipe ones are kind of great. Like maybe Super Bowl is coming up, and instead of sending a postcard that says Happy Super Bowl, you're sending them, hey, I found this great recipe. I've used it at my Super Bowl. I wanted to share this in case you're having a party or something like that. So they have some really cool cards in here to just go through. Again, think about what your 80/20 is and how you want to be presented. But there's a lot of options in this personal marketing area for you guys to kind of go through. I'm going to go into, let's see which one. Let me go into the tax one real quick. And then these ones are super wordy. So the other thing too is I try not to pick anything too wordy because again, it's going to be, and you'll see some of these are flyers, some of these are large postcards, some of these are smaller postcards. So keep that in mind. The front of the postcard, you're going to do through Express Docs, which I'm doing right now. The back of the postcard is where you're going to put the meat of why you're mailing them. Maybe you want to tell people in Ravenswood Manor, again, looking back at my remind, I know exactly what's happening in this area. I know I'm mailing out to mostly 2-bedroom, 2 baths. So the back of my postcard is where I'm putting the meat, the information. So yeah, I'm sending them a really cool recipe that I hope they pin on their fridge. But the back is where I'm saying, the market in Ravenswood Square is hot right now. 2-bed, condos are selling at an average of 325,000 with an average days on market of 3 days, right? Or something like that. And then you say single family homes, the average sale price is this with this many days on the market. Call me today. I'm your real estate expert. I'm happy to give you a free valuation of your home. Something like that to help grab them, because postcards are static, right? There's no clickable link on it, unlike an email or a text message that I'm sending. So I have to convince that consumer to pull up their phone or go to their computer and literally type me an email or look up my account through CB Homes or my Facebook or whatever. So I want to captivate them by thinking, wow, this front of the postcard's really cool. Like I might actually pin that up on there. Let me see what the back says. Oh, I have a 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo. I only bought it for like $125 7 years ago. Are they really selling at $325? This is crazy. Let me check this out. That's the reaction you're hoping to get. Whether it happens every single time, it's kind of the luck of the draw, but that's why you have to be strategic. Because at the end of the day, if you're not seeing a return on that farm after giving it due diligence, after giving it timing, and most importantly, after being consistent, then that's where you can reevaluate and say, maybe the front of my postcards aren't that captivating, or maybe the information I'm conveying isn't really the way I want to convey. Or maybe, one agent seems to be doing the bulk of the business in there. Like during the last couple of months, I've been emailing or mailing these out. I'm going to move my farm by a couple blocks because I just feel like I'm not going to make a dent in that area. You have to be prepared to think strategically about all these different options, because farming, just like everything else in your business, is an option for your business, but you should be strategic about it. You guys are all running your own small businesses. And so every dollar you spend, every strategy you do to make money in this industry, you should be tracking. And one of the best things about Caldwell Banker with tracking is you can take David Hacker's class on your business planning, which is I think one of the most highly attended classes. And I'm sure David is going to chime in and correct me on that, but it's one of the most popular classes. Every agent I've had that goes through it is like, oh my gosh, I have my 1 year, my 3 year, my 5 year plan. I know what I'm going to spend. I know what my goal is to make. All of this kind of comes together. That's why I really recommend, especially for the farming or the sphere of influence class that we're leading, that's why I put in those suggestions to take those classes so it can kind of all make sense at the end of the day. I'm going to pop really quickly into the chat because I see my thing is making noise. Oh, I don't have any questions. Anybody have any questions? Business planning is tomorrow. See, David, I knew I could always count on you for that. Business planning is tomorrow. So if you guys haven't taken that class, he's giving you all the information. It's tomorrow at 9 a.m. Go into Sales Pro as soon as you're done with this and register for that class. The great thing is it's virtual, so you guys don't even have to get dressed. I mean, you should probably wear something presentable on top at least for David. But it's a really, really great class, and it's going to help you guys figure out, how am I spending money? Where do I want to spend it? We're at about the half-hour mark, so I just wanted to pause real quick and ask, does anyone on here, oh, Curtis, I see you're on here. Perfect. So Curtis, as you guys know, is our sales support specialist. No, not sales support specialist, but he helps out in our offices. And Curtis actually farms a building that he does a lot of business in. So Curtis, do you want to unmute and kind of talk about your farming theory, specifically with your building in Irving Park or Lakeview, not Irving Park?
Great. Hey, I love the stuff on Remind. Thank you so much. I am what, oh, I'm kind of echoing back. Does everybody hear me okay? Okay. So I'm a vertical farmer, meaning I farm one specific building. It is a huge building. There's 901 units in the building. I think when you pick a farm, when you pick either a neighborhood or a farming area, the general mathematics that you want at least a 6% turnover a year. So you want to go in and find out what you're farming, the area you're farming, check on the MLS, and just see if you're farming 200 units or 200 homes, you want at least 6% of those to turn over every year. And out of that 6%, you want to make sure that there is not one agent that commands the market. Farming is a very expensive way of marketing, and if you're fighting an uphill battle, you don't want to stack it against you. There's not to say that you can't figure out what 6% is and subtract what that agent is, what she's doing, what he's doing. As long as there's still a nice piece of pie left for you, I would never not go up against somebody. Coldwell Banker agents, we've got the tools, we've got the leverage, we've got the system, so we can really go up against anybody and have enough confidence to do that. I'm trying to think of, I currently have an office on the ground floor of my farm. I've been farming the building for 18 years. Like I say, there's 901 units. I've sold over 300 units in the building. It took me 18 years to do it, but it's a slow process. But once you get the snowball rolling down the hill, it's a great source of business.
Thank you, Curtis. And that was actually a really good point. So I kind of tried to type some of Curtis's comments for you guys in the chat for those of you who are taking notes. Obviously, this is recorded and will go out in my Friday roundup. But Curtis makes a good point. So you got to make sure that there is turnover in that area. The story I always tell is a couple years ago, I listed a townhouse in Little Italy in a townhouse complex. And literally my clients were the last ones to have bought, and they had already owned it for like 8 to 10 years. So it was incredibly difficult to comp. But that's a good example of that complex might not have been the best idea to farm if nothing is moving in that area. They were referrals and Sphere, so I wasn't farming them. I got it through my Sphere. But you can look at all of that through MLS, through InfoSparks, and I'll probably jump into InfoSparks just to give you guys kind of a clue on InfoSparks. So if Remind is the tool you're using to pick your addresses and get the mailing list, right, and focus on some of those key filters, InfoSparks is the information that you're utilizing to put on that back part of the postcard, that part that's telling them the average sale prices or the average days on market. Pro tip, pick the stat that sounds good, that sounds exciting, and use that stat. Don't just put stats there. Think really strategically about, wow, that, these people that I'm farming bought between, 3 and 7 years ago, they could have a lot of equity in that property. So I'm going to focus on how the average sale price is up by 24% in this area or something like that. So the turnover you can also find in the MLS. Farming shouldn't just be, I'm going to go and Remind, I'm going to pick a farm and I'm just going to mail it. You have to, again, be strategic. So like Curtis said, use the MLS to see, okay, now that I've figured out based on all of the different filters Remind's saying, I'm going to draw that same map in MLS in a search, and I'm going to see what's happened in the last 24 months there. And I'm going to see, has it been one agent dominating it? Has it been just a smattering of agents? You know, if it's been a couple agents and they seem to be reoccurring, like Curtis said, still might be worth going up them. You guys don't give up on the offering you have. We've already had our value proposition class, so you guys know what you have to offer out there. But that's going to be really key. And then he also mentioned vertical farming versus neighborhood or area farming. So vertical farming is pretty popular in Chicago. It's not as popular in the suburbs for kind of obvious reasons, right? Vertical is buildings. So you have some agents that maybe they live in a building, or they've just done several deals in the same building. So they're like, okay, my name is everywhere in this building. I'm going to start farming this whole building. Or I'm going to farm, 50% of the building and work up to doing the whole amount, whatever it might be. It's really great if you live in the building because you are going to get postcards from other people farming. So you'll be able to see what other agents are trying to get business in there. So there's the vertical. And then the neighborhood or area is what I built out on Remine, right? Because I was focused on, I want to work in this area. Personally, I never vertical farmed because I was much more area focused. However, as Curtis pointed out, vertical farming works really, really well for him. And he's made good dent in that building and lists a lot of those offerings. Plus he rents an office space in that building. So he's kind of sort of the realtor on site when he's there. So he's farming and being present for them. Does anybody have any questions off of that before I jump into InfoSparks? Quiet group today. I mean, I do see hand raising, but I can't tell you guys if that was from last time. Oh,
Yes,
go ahead.
Rachel, how are you?
Good.
I've got one quick question.
Yep, Nick. Hi.
Oh, sorry. I felt like I was talking over somebody there for a second. Apologize for that. I just had so as far as customization of the postcards, I was going to look into farming just my area that I live in. And are you able on the postcard to put, hello, Humboldt Park neighbors, something along the lines of I live right in your neighborhood kind of thing? Or is that not?
Yeah, you can do that. You can say I'm your neighborhood expert.
I didn't know. I was just making sure it was customizable in the back, like you could put in your own content rather than it being a template or something like that.
The front of the postcards are not usually adjustable, but the back, that's where you're writing your copy, right? Your wording. So yes, you can put that in there.
Awesome. Thank you.
Steer clear of words like best, think about fair housing. So that's all I would say is always think about the fair housing, right? We can't say, this is the safest neighborhood for you guys to live in. You can't use words like that.
Right.
But it's a very common practice for realtors to say, as your neighborhood expert or as your realtor in residence, I wanted to share this with you. Ricardo, great question. Is there a quick way to determine which agents are doing repeat business in a neighborhood? Sure. So you can either do that through the MLS or InfoSparks. And since I'm going to jump into InfoSparks anyway, I'm going to kind of show you guys that because what you're looking at is the market data. So I'll jump into that. I did see, Denny, is your hand raised from before when I asked you guys to roll call? Or do you have a question? Hand is raised from roll call. You guys, this lighting is doing me wonders. I don't know if you guys have noticed it, but pro tip, always have lighting coming at you. Okay, thanks, Denny. All right, so I'm gonna jump in real quick into the MLS. Hold on one second. Joy, can you see my MLS?
It's loading. Yes, there it is.
Thank you. Joy is so awesome, you guys, as is David. I'm so happy that they were able to come on this, but it makes me a little bit nervous, because they're the trainers. So when you're looking at your MLS, your guys's might look a little different than mine because you can move around MLSs, but InfoSparks is going to be always in the tools, resources, and links area. So my InfoSparks is over here in the bottom right-hand corner. Again, yours might be in a little different spot. You'll notice Remine is also in the tools. So if I click InfoSparks, it's going to open a new page because this is a tool that's provided by MRED. And it's going to be kind of open up here. Right now it's just open. It's the entire MLS area that it's looking in. So now this is where I can add in a few filters as well. Okay. So I can search by MLS area. I can search by zip code, but I can also search by agents. So to Ricardo's point, that's like a way to do it. So let's just say I'm going to search in Lincoln Square. because Ravenswood Garden is not, of course, its own MLS area. Thank you, MLS. So I start typing it in, and you'll notice that it's saying 8004. That's Lincoln Square. So now, without any other filters, this is kind of pulling up for me the averages, right? So now I already know that I'm farming people between, what did I say, 200 and 600,000. So I'm going to go ahead and just put this, or actually I might do custom. Maybe I want to do the same thing as before, but I'm going to do the 200 to 49,000. 449. I don't know what I'm saying. Single family, I'm going to do attached and detached. So I'm going to do both single family homes and condos. I'm not going to worry about new construction or resale just yet. I am going to do traditional because REOs and short sales tend to be valued slightly differently. I don't really like to mess around with the square footage because unless you did a floor plan, unless these other realtors did floor plans, they're usually guessing at square footage, or they put no square footage in at all. So I find that when I add that in, it limits me a little bit too much on what I'm looking for. I can search by the bedroom counts, transaction sides, bathrooms, things like that. But for right now, I want to stay as pretty unfiltered, I guess I should say, as unspecific as I can, because I'm trying to find stats that look good. And then obviously each property is going to be different. My goal is to get a call to come in with a CMA and tell them what it's worth. So right now I'm looking at a 3-year average. But if we look at this average sales price in Lincoln Square, right now, all in, the average sale price is $321,771, which is up, if you notice here, by 2.1% year over year. So that's something to think about and be able to use. Again, find stats that work for you. I love the market time stats usually. So market time is not a great stat if you're a seller, but the market time is at 58 days, which is actually up 13.7%. So I'm just going to deny that. It's up 13.7%, meaning things are staying on the MLS 13.7% longer than they were. Right. It's sort of cool and interesting. I encourage you guys all to just play around with InfoSparks, whether you're looking to build a farm or you have an upcoming CMA in an area, or you're just looking to be an expert, because you can get some really crazy data on all of the different things. And especially this year with COVID, right? Because we've had a really weird year. You can look at it in just the last 12 months. So the last year to just even see. So right at the beginning, before COVID really hit, it was pretty low, and now it's gone up a lot, right? So it's kind of cool just to like geek out and look at it there for a second. But then we can also change, we can add areas. So maybe you're comparing and contrasting two different areas. So maybe I have a seller or a buyer that's looking in two different areas, and I want to be able to show them what the difference between Lincoln Square and Lakeview would be for them to buy. So it's kind of cool how you can go through it. But then you can also go into Market View, and Market View is going to go ahead and offer you, to Ricardo's question, a little bit more about who's doing what in what area. So again, I'm going to look in Lincoln Square, and I'm able to then see, based on the agents, and based on, this is pulling August 2020 because it's the most recent, right? And I'm looking at the previous month, but maybe I want to look at a rolling 12 month. Who's done the most business, and if I'm seeing them dominate. So for example, there's 412 units that sold in 8004 in the last 12 months. And the highest any one person had was 7%. So Curtis, if you wanted to do the quick and dirty math on that, but you know, they're not totally dominating. It would be worth doing it in Lincoln Square in that area. And you can kind of go down and see who the different agents are, what they're doing. You can obviously select an agent to highlight. Maybe you want to learn a little bit more like, okay, well, what company are they at? Oh, well, I know that we have more resources or whatever, so I'm going to definitely go after this. So you can go through and see the units that they've listed, the units that they've represented on the sales side for that as well, their total units and the total volume. So Ricardo, does that kind of answer your question? And I'll look back at your chat and see. You guys are quite a bunch today. Do you guys have any questions on InfoSparks while I'm in here, or how to utilize this to come up with stats to put in your postcard? Yay, Ricardo, I'm glad it answered. Nope. Okay, one pro tip I did learn when I was farming is in very small print, okay, because I didn't want to take up that much page, that much space on my postcard. But if I was pulling stats from InfoSparks, remember that a lot of people are very literal. So if I send a postcard to someone and I say the average sale price is $321 in your area and the average market time is 58 days, let's say that person saves my postcard for 4 months and things dramatically changed like they did this year, and they're trying to quote me off those stats, and I go there and they're telling me, well, you lied or you said it wrong. So I always do a little asterisk at the bottom in small print that I just say that the data was pulled through, and then I just like kind of copy and paste like InfoSparks' information, and then I put the actual date that I pulled it, just so I have that little consumer way to be like, well, as you can see, I pulled it from September 1st, 2020. You're calling me now January 2021. Things have changed a little bit different. So glad you called me, but let's talk about where the market is right now. So that would be my little like pro tip for you guys when you send it out, is just add that. You can make it very small font. It should still be readable, I guess, without a magnifying glass. But that way you can kind of just make sure that the consumer also knows when you pulled that data, how recent it was, and where they're at with it. Curtis, do you have anything to add on that?
No, I'm learning as I go. Thank you.
No problem. Well, since I actually have David and Joy on this, and some of you have taken their class, some of you guys haven't, some of you guys have signed up for it. David, if you wanted to go first and unmute, and if you have any comments about what we've already gone over or a little teaser for what they will learn in your guys' class, I welcome you to chime in.
Okay. Let's see, business planning's tomorrow at 9 a.m. Need I say more? It's my soapbox class. It's the class that I highly recommend for every single agent out there before you take any other class. And did you know this? Based on the 100-day effect, if you want to cash a commission check in January of 2021, you need to be signing clients in October 2020. That's next month. And that's what we're going to talk about tomorrow. And it's all based on your numbers. It's not my numbers, it's your numbers. How many contacts do you have to make every single day that you're in the office? And I hope you're not in the office 7 days a week, 365 days a year, because that's not a really good quality of life. But how many contacts do you have to make? And the one really fun thing I like doing, because I put my own numbers in there, fake numbers, but then towards the middle of it, before my magic number appears, how many contacts I have to make, I ask everyone, what do they think that number is going to be? And it's amazing what the number turns out to really be based on, or compared to the numbers you think it's going to be. I can tell you this, that if you're consistent in your business and you do the work, the amount of calls you have to make every day to hit whatever goal you want is not near as large as you think it is. I'll see you tomorrow at 9 a.m.
I was trying to talk and I was muted again. So Joy, I'm going to push you in 1 second, but to David's point, think of business planning. If you don't go through it, you're like a buyer who's starting to look at property without being pre-approved. Or maybe you did one of those quick and dirty calculators, and you think that this is what your carrying costs are going to be, and then you get really pre-approved and you really go through the process and you're like, oh, that's a lot different of a number than I thought. That's running your business without a business plan. And I don't want any of you guys to fall into that. David, would you agree with that kind of?
I could not agree with you more. In fact, if you worked in the corporate world, anybody, say that I'm wrong. If you worked in the corporate world, you had a budget, you had a P&L. And the thing that's amazing about business planning is this. 99.9% of agents, let's say they want to do $100,000 next year. When they figure out they're not going to make budget or they're not going to make their goal? Around November 1st, when it's way too late to do anything. What's so brilliant about, and I didn't create this, all right, but what's so brilliant about the My Business Planner is every single month, you're going to be able to answer that question. Am I on track? After the first month, after the first quarter, you're going to know whether you're on track. And that's really comforting, right? You're like, I'm on track to do my 100,000, my 200, my 400, my 500, my 45,000, whatever that is. But every single month, you're going to know where you are. Do I have to make adjustments, right? Am I missing one transaction? Do I have to make that up in the next 9 months after the first quarter? Is that what you have to do? Or better yet, oh my gosh, I'm killing my plan. So guess what? I'm going from 100,000. I'm going to do 150. Immediately, you can change that plan with the My Business Planner and ratchet up your business. To me, it's like the ultimate drug. once you get hooked on the success you're going to experience by taking business planning and doing the work and being consistent at it, you're not going to be able to stop tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock.
Thank you. And so if you guys are thinking about farming, and I love farming, I've gotten listings from farming. Curtis shared you his experience, and I see he's going to chime in a minute too. You can't just go into farming without thinking of that business plan, because if you guys, if I recruited you or you've met with me, I'm a big believer in spending money smartly. I'm also like a budget person, so I like to not spend money where it's not needed. I think very long and hard before I decide to put money in. And you're in an industry where like you're probably getting calls and ads every day like, this is what realtors should spend money on, or get great leads here, or do this. And sometimes we fall into those traps of paying for things that we don't necessarily need, or saying, okay, I'm just going to farm this and I'm going to spend $100, but 5 months in, you're like, ooh, I haven't had a closing. And now I'm not really sure I want to spend $100 a month on farming. So that's why that business planning is so important, especially if you're looking to incorporate a money spending activity like farming. Again, I'm a huge believer. Some of my best clients I've gotten from farming out, right? My favorite story, and this is like the unicorn you guys should all hope to achieve, is for one shining week a couple years ago, Trulia, back when Trulia and Zillow were separate companies, ranked Rogers Park the #1 neighborhood to live in Chicago. And I jumped on it and I sent out like 500 like hand addressed like envelopes with like that flyer printed out saying, hey, your neighborhood is is ranked by Trulia as the #1 neighborhood to live in Chicago. If you're a homeowner who thought, hey, maybe it's a good time to sell, let's go out this momentum. And I had somebody call me. I got his listing. It was a duplex down. I believe it was a little over 300,000, a 7% listing, because I came with my value proposition, and we sold it in, I think, like 3 or 4 days after we listed it. So that's a unicorn, but I tell you that because it can happen. Other times, my one of my first listings I ever got was from farming. They saved my postcards for 4 months before they called me. So these things do take time. Hopefully all of you get a unicorn. That would be great. Joy, do you want to go ahead and touch on, anything, your tips on farming, or a pitch for the farming class, or any commentary about what I've already chatted about?
Absolutely. So I want to more so comment about what you've chatted about, and tell the agents to really, when the recording comes out on Friday, to listen to it again, because the one thing that you touched on today that we don't really touch on during the class is how you break down Remind, InfoSparks, opening up the MLS, as well as utilizing Express Docs. So today was really like a VIP version of what we share in the farming class, but it is so needed. So I just wanted to say, for those of you that was on this class, make sure that you take the recording that Rachel's going to send out, look at it again. When she stated to go in and play around with Remind and InfoSparks, definitely do that, so you can go ahead and decide what area you want to farm, how many units will be located in that farm. Start thinking about your marketing plan, so that when you come to one of David and my class, you'll now have a strategy in place. And so I loved how you really showed the agents the tools that they can use that's provided by Coldwell Banker to make farming a reality for their business.
Thank you, Joy.
Yeah, you're welcome. That's all I have.
Thank you. And Joy and David make really good points. So, and I've kind of explained this to a lot of you guys before, but the reason why I've also wanted them to be incorporated into the Coaching to Confidence series, and especially with this month, I've let you guys know the different classes they have. Think about their classes as sort of like that foundational why this is something you could use on your business, how to prepare yourself mentally to do it, the different techniques, the different ideas. And then you can look at our Coaching to Confidence series as being the application of it. So they really go hand in hand, because I'm going to tell you right now, farming is a long game, like Curtis and I mentioned, like David and Joy mentioned. And so you've got to have the mindset, you've got to have the why am I doing this behind you in order to keep going at it. I can't tell you how many agents I've coached over the years that send out like 3 months worth of postcards and then they get mad that nothing happens and then they give up. And I'm like, well, then you just wasted 3 months of money for no reason, because you're choosing to just give up because they didn't take David Hacker's business planning class to know what they could afford monthly. So kind of comes full circle on it. But I am a big believer in farming, but I'm also a big believer in the other 1,200 ways there are to make money in this industry. It's about what's going to work for you. And I personally liked this more than cold calling when I was starting. So that's why I like to train on it. Curtis, I see you have your hand up waiting patiently. Chime in.
Hey, I just really wanted to say, kudos to Dave. I drove out to Oakton Community College last November and took the business planning class. It was the best class of the year to prep and get ready for 2020. The business tracker that he's talking about, it's kind of like a bionic Excel spreadsheet. It was very easy to use. You did have to do your homework. You put it together. But man, it's like a recipe book that looks towards the future, what you're doing, what you're going to do, and what you want to do. And it was just a huge helpful tool. And I just want to tell David, I thank you.
The check is in the mail.
And to Curtis's point, you guys, and to David's point, right? So if you want things to close in January, you want paychecks in January, February, you've got to have people looking in October. So November is when it starts business planning with your management team. So myself and Curtis will be doing business planning sessions with all of you guys. So take David's class this month or next month at the very latest to start thinking about your 2021. So when you meet with us in November, you already have an idea of what you want your 2021 to look like. And that's where Curtis and I then help come up with coaching, accountability, and maybe after taking this coaching class and the education classes and then the cold calling, you're saying, okay, Rachel, I want to make a conscious effort in 2021 to incorporate farming and cold calling in my business. After taking David Hacker's class with the business planning, this is what I figured out budget-wise and the accountability I need to be held to. Now help me XYZ. So think of it very holistically, but I think it's really important to remember that this is your guys' business. The success and failure of your business is on your shoulders. My job, David's job, Joy's job, Curtis's job, Coldwell Banker's job is to help you facilitate. Help give you the tools, the technology, the foundational understanding of ways to be successful, but you have to take the initiative in your business to go out and really be actionable. And a big part of that, you guys know I'm a huge believer in 1 hour a day of prospecting and 1 hour a day of education. We have between like 8 and 12 education classes that are an hour long every day that you guys could get that into, right? So really focus on that and be actionable in these. So I hope this helped you guys with touching on Remind, touching on InfoSparks, and then of course Express Docs. I encourage all of you to start playing around. Before I even picked my farm, the first time I started farming, I probably built like 10 or 12 of them just so I could get a feel for how the program worked, so I could get a feel for the different values on each street in that farm. I also encourage you guys to all drive through that farm. So I actually walk through that neighborhood every day because it's in my like walking area. So I know firsthand the amount of low rises, mid rises. I know there are no high rises there. I know what the style of single family home tends to be. I know what the lots usually sell for. So take those initiatives, drive through the farms as well, play in InfoSparks, look at your neighborhood, look at all the different neighborhoods in Chicago. And actually, I really challenge you guys, InfoSparks should be something you look at every single day, just to get, especially for the newer agents, to start learning the value of Lincoln Park, the value of Hyde Park, Humboldt Park, Lincoln Square, wherever. So I hope this helped. Thank you guys all so much for being on. I don't see any other questions in the chat. If you have something, go ahead and unmute yourself really quickly. But otherwise, I will let you guys get on to the rest of your day. I'm going to take that as no questions. Okay.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you guys so much. Stay safe, stay dry,
Thank you, Curtis.
and I will see you later.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
David. Thanks, Joy.
Thank you.